The best gift, you vanishing from our lives. Those words hung in the air, sharper than any knife. I didn't flinch. I smiled, calm and quiet, though inside my heart was thrumming, a slow, deliberate beat. I had always known this day might come. That smugness in Jake's voice, that self-satisfied grin, it told me everything. Lena, his sister, hovered nearby, eyes darting between us, waiting for some sign of my discomfort. But I offered none. "Really, Mom," Emily's fiancé said, leaning back in the chair, "it would be perfect. You leaving, stepping out, gone from our lives." I nodded slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if considering the suggestion like any other small matter of decor or schedule. Emily, blissfully unaware, fidgeted with the napkin in her lap. Her excitement for tomorrow's wedding lit the room, like sunlight spilling through a window, oblivious to the shadows lurking in the corners. Nancy, my neighbor and lifelong friend, who had accompanied me to help with last-minute wedding details, cleared her throat. "Jake, maybe that's a little harsh." Her voice was soft, careful, trying to ease the tension, but I could see the flicker of admiration in her eyes as she looked at me. For holding it together, for not showing even a hint of fear or outrage. "Mom, you don't understand," Jake pressed, leaning forward, lowering his voice. "This house, your money. After tomorrow, it's basically ours. You could just step aside, make it easier for everyone." I felt the slow rise of heat in my chest, not from anger but clarity. Years of polite patience, of observing, of letting people reveal their true colors, this was the moment it crystallized. I had always been careful. I had always protected myself, quietly, without spectacle, and now this man, thinking he could charm or coerce me, was offering his own arrogance like a challenge. I sipped my tea, deliberately slow, letting the warmth trail down my throat. My eyes met his, calm, steady, and I said softly, almost like a confession, "I can do exactly that." Emily gasped softly, "Mom," but I held her gaze with a gentle firmness. No explanation yet, no alarm, just a promise in silence. Lena's mouth tightened, her smirk faltering for the first time. Jake leaned back, confusion knitting his brow. Nancy touched my arm. "You're sure about this?" she whispered. I nodded. She gave me a small, approving smile, like one friend recognizing another's quiet strength. It wasn't about spite. Not yet. It was about dignity. It was about teaching, in the softest, most unshakable way, that entitlement and arrogance are often rewarded not by confrontation, but by quiet, deliberate action. Tomorrow, the wedding would be celebrated, but tonight, I would prepare. Every envelope, every note, every small, precise measure of protection I had planned in secret. It all began here, in this moment, with that simple, piercing statement from a man who thought he understood my world, and for the first time in years, I felt free. The morning after Jake's words, the house felt unusually heavy. Emily darted around, checking flowers, adjusting ribbons, buzzing with a happiness that made my chest ache in a gentle, protective way. I followed her quietly, watching, listening. Every laugh, every hurried footstep reminded me what tomorrow meant to her. And yet, in the corners, Jake's presence was like a shadow stretching across the floor. "Mom, do you think these centerpieces look fine?" Emily asked, glancing at me with wide eyes, expecting a warm compliment. I nodded, smiling. "They're beautiful, darling. You've done an amazing job." My words were calm, but inside I was calculating. Every glance Jake threw my way, every subtle claim he made, I noted, "Mom, you know, after tomorrow, the house, it could really be ours, you know," Jake said, leaning casually against the kitchen counter, voice dripping with a practiced charm. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the warmth, letting my calm absorb the weight of his arrogance. "Of course," I said lightly. "We'll see what tomorrow brings." He laughed, a short, sharp sound, and glanced at Lena, who was rearranging napkins at the dining table. "See? Even your mother agrees." Lena smiled too, a little too wide, her excitement mingled with mischief. It was almost comical how entitled they felt, as if everything I had quietly built over decades was theirs for the taking. I watched them, my heart steady, my thoughts deliberate. My home, my life, had been earned quietly, methodically, and it was mine to protect. I had never flaunted it, never let Emily or anyone else feel it was their birthright, because life had taught me the quiet power of observation, of patience. Nancy leaned over my shoulder, whispering with a soft shake of her head, "They're pushing too far, Margaret. Don't let them." I gave her a small, reassuring squeeze. "I know, Nancy. I see everything." David called briefly from Toledo, just a short hello, asking about last-minute wedding details. His voice, always careful, reminded me of past mistakes and quiet wisdom. I told him, "Everything's fine. We're handling it." And I meant it. Fine for me now meant poised, deliberate, in control. Emily bounced into the living room, phone in hand. "Mom, check this." Aunt Laura just sent the final guest list. Everyone's confirmed. Her joy was infectious, but I felt a protective pang. Tomorrow was supposed to be about her happiness, not their arrogance, not their arrogance. Jake tried to corner me again, lingering near the stairs. "You've always been so generous, Margaret," he said. "I hope you'll step aside gracefully." I looked at him, calm, measured, and allowed a small, serene smile to cross my face. "Generosity doesn't mean giving everything away," I said, letting the words linger in the air. It was a small crack in their self-assured world, barely noticeable, but it was the beginning. They didn't know it yet, but their assumptions, their entitlement, were about to meet the quiet, deliberate strength of a woman who had spent decades mastering patience, observation, and timing. As I walked back to the kitchen, I felt a subtle thrill not from anger, but from clarity. Tomorrow would be a celebration. And yet, in the quiet corners of this house, in the small, deliberate actions I was beginning to arrange, the balance was quietly shifting. Jake and Lena might think they understood the world, but by morning, everything would feel different. Later that evening, after Emily had disappeared upstairs to change into her rehearsal dress, I sank into the worn armchair by the window. The house was quiet now, except for the soft ticking of the old clock in the hall. And in that quiet, memories began to surface small, sharp reminders of the way Jake and Lena had always assumed they were entitled to more than they deserved. I remembered the first dinner at our home after Emily had brought Jake around. Jake had praised the food, the decor, even my garden, but there had been an edge to it. A faint, almost imperceptible air of ownership, as if he believed the house, my careful arrangements were simply his inheritance waiting to be claimed. Lena had laughed at the wrong moments, commenting on the furniture and the old-fashioned style, oblivious to the care I'd poured into every corner. I had kept my composure then, just as I always did. A quiet smile, polite words, nothing to reveal the careful measures I'd taken to secure my own life. Over the years, these little moments had stacked up, each one like a brick in a wall of realization. And now, the wall was complete in my mind. I saw clearly the pattern of entitlement and arrogance, the way they had always assumed the world would bend to them. Nancy came in softly, holding 2 cups of tea. "You've been quiet," she said gently, placing 1 cup beside me. I let my fingers brush against hers, a small gesture of gratitude. "I've been thinking," I replied. "About them, about everything. They're good at pretending, but I see the cracks." She nodded, eyes full of understanding. You've always been careful. You've always known when to move quietly. Yes, I whispered, watching the shadows of the trees sway outside the window. And now, I have to act quietly but decisively. The memories kept coming. The time Jake had dismissed my advice on Emily's first apartment, insisting he knew better. The way Lena had criticized my choices during Emily's birthday party, all smiles and sweetness on the surface, sharp words underneath. These were not new behaviors. They were patterns, small truths hidden beneath charm and civility. I realized something important in that stillness. I had spent decades protecting my dignity, my independence, and my daughter's sense of stability. I could not, allow that careful foundation to be assumed, taken or destroyed by arrogance disguised as charm. As I sipped the tea Nancy had poured, I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. This wasn't about confrontation. It wasn't about anger. It was about clarity, about taking control in a way that was calm, measured, and irreversible. My plan didn't need theatrics. It needed precision, patience, and subtlety. Later, Emily called down to ask if I had checked the floral arrangements. Her voice was light, full of excitement. I promised I had, all while feeling a slow, satisfying certainty growing in me. By tomorrow, everything would shift, and the house, my legacy, my dignity, would remain exactly where it belonged. Jake and Lena thought they understood the world. They had no idea how quietly powerful a woman could be when she chose to act deliberately, when she chose patience over rage. And tonight, as the house settled into the calm of evening, I knew everything was quietly, perfectly in motion. The morning after my reflections, I rose early, before anyone else stirred, and walked through the house with deliberate calm. Every detail, the door knobs, the garden gate, the mailboxes seemed suddenly significant. My home had always been my sanctuary, each corner a testament to years of careful choices, of patience, of quiet strength. And now, it would be the centerpiece of my subtle, measured plan. I called Tom Riley just after 7. His voice, always professional, yet quietly reassuring, answered immediately. "Morning, Margaret," he said. "Everything ready for the final review?" "Yes," I replied softly, letting a long pause settle between us. "I want everything in place before the wedding." "They should never see it coming." He chuckled lightly, the sound calm and precise. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "I always do," I whispered, a small smile tugging at the corners of my lips. "This isn't about proving anything. It's about protecting what belongs to me and ensuring clarity for Emily's future. That's all." After hanging up, I moved quietly through the kitchen, preparing tea and organizing the morning breakfast. Jake appeared in the doorway, brushing past me, still wearing the casual arrogance of someone who believed entitlement was inherited. "Mom," he said, voice smooth, "you've been awfully quiet these past few days. You'll want to enjoy tomorrow, won't you?" I met his gaze calmly, stirring my tea. "Enjoyment comes in many forms," I said, letting the words linger. Jake blinked, a flicker of confusion crossing his features, and he moved away, muttering about helping Emily with final decorations. Lena lingered nearby, pretending to examine the table settings, but watching me with those sharp, calculating eyes. "You're awfully composed," she said, her voice almost sweet. "I can't imagine how you manage it all." I smiled gently, placing the teapot down. "Composure is a skill, Lena. Something you'll understand with time." Nancy came in again, carrying a small envelope she had brought by mistake, perhaps meant for the florist. I took it, fingering it quietly, thinking of the envelopes I would later prepare for the wedding guests. Each one, carefully considered, holding more than a simple message, silent reminders, legal clarity, a quiet way to ensure the future would remain unassailable. Every glance, every comment from Jake and Lena was catalogued, observed. Their arrogance, their assumptions, provided the perfect map of vulnerabilities. Each subtle slip, each overconfident word fed into my strategy. The plan didn't need confrontation. It didn't need drama. It only needed precision, timing, and quiet patience. By late afternoon, I felt a calm certainty settle over me. The small victories of observation, the careful orchestration of documents, the quiet alignment with Tom, all of it came together in a way that only I could appreciate. They thought the house, the control, the future, they thought it was theirs. But in truth, nothing had ever been theirs to take. As I walked past Emily, helping her adjust a veil, I felt a surge of quiet satisfaction. Tomorrow, laughter and celebration would fill the house. But beneath it, the foundations of understanding, respect, and dignity would be silently reinforced. And Jake and Lena would realize too late, of course, that some lessons are best delivered quietly, deliberately, without a single raised voice. And in that quiet, I felt a deep, steady peace. Everything was moving exactly as it should. The rehearsal started in the late afternoon, the church quietly filling with the soft hum of anticipation. Emily flitted around like a bird, adjusting her dress, greeting guests, her joy almost tangible. I followed quietly, observing every movement, every interaction, feeling the familiar rhythm of control in the calm corners of my mind. Jake was there early, as usual, trying to assert a casual dominance. "I think we should rearrange the chairs," he said, voice smooth. "Makes more sense for the photos." He glanced at me, expecting approval. I simply smiled. "Whatever works best for Emily," I said, letting my calm settle over him like an invisible weight. He frowned slightly, realizing he didn't get the reaction he wanted. Lena hovered close, whispering suggestions to him about decorations, seating, even the order of the processional. She didn't notice the subtle shifts in my gaze, the slight frown when she overstepped, the quiet attention to each detail. Their sense of control was unmistakable, yet I could feel the cracks forming under the weight of their overconfidence. Emily rushed over to me, tugging at my arm. "Mom, did you see the flower arrangements? Aren't they perfect?" Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and I nodded, feeling a deep swell of protective love. "They're beautiful, darling. You've done wonderfully," I whispered. My words weren't just praise. They were a shield, a quiet support beneath the chaos of their assumptions. Later, during a brief pause, Jake leaned close, lowering his voice. "You know, once Emily and I are married, the house, you and I, we could have discussed things differently. It could have been simpler." I looked at him slow and deliberated. "Jake, Friggy is often overrated, Jake." "Sometimes clarity is better," I replied softly. He blinked, the words catching him off guard. Lena, noticing the exchange, frowned. "Mom, you don't need to be so subtle," she said, though her tone carried more confusion than accusation. Nancy appeared at my side, carrying a small notebook. "You're doing well," she whispered. "Every detail they underestimate is an advantage." I smiled faintly, her presence. Her steady support made the quiet tension manageable, almost comforting. As the rehearsal continued, I noticed the little things: Jake's foot tapping impatiently, Lena whispering urgently, misjudging gestures. They were overconfident, assuming tomorrow's celebration would solidify their sense of entitlement. But with each misstep, each subtle display of arrogance, I filed the moment away. Every comment, every misplaced glance would later feed into the quiet orchestration I had begun. By the time the rehearsal ended, Emily was radiant, unaware of the tension simmering beneath the surface. Guests complimented her, offered hugs, and celebrated quietly. And I moved among them, calm, observing, planting the faintest seeds of a lesson that would soon unfold. Tomorrow, the wedding would be full of laughter, love, and celebration. But tonight, the foundations were quietly set. Jake and Lena had no idea how carefully every word, every assumption, every step had been noted. And by morning they would see that patience, observation, and deliberate action often carry more weight than arrogance or charm. I returned home that night, the house settling into silence around me. And in that silence I felt a quiet certainty, the first true taste of the balance beginning to shift. That evening, back at the house, I finally allowed myself a long, slow breath. The rehearsal was over, the guests gone, and the quiet of my home wrapped around me like a soft blanket. I moved to the desk in the study, where a neat stack of envelopes waited, blank yet brimming with intent. Each one would carry more than words. They would carry clarity, boundaries, and a gentle but undeniable lesson. Nancy hovered nearby, her presence comforting and steady. "You've really thought this through," she whispered. I nodded, fingers brushing the smooth paper. "I have to, Nancy. Every detail counts. They think they understand, but they don't. And tomorrow, they'll see." Emily was upstairs, likely rehearsing her vows or daydreaming about the perfect wedding. I let her have this innocence. She didn't need to know how close arrogance had come to disturbing the balance of her life. My responsibility as her mother was to protect that joy, and quietly, decisively, I would. I began writing, slowly, carefully, names of each guest, small messages that seemed ordinary, but with subtle notes embedded legal clarifications about my property, reminders that my independence could not be assumed, gentle words that would leave an impression without a single raised voice. Every line carried my calm, my dignity, my quiet strength. Jake and Lena were upstairs in their room, laughing and plotting, unaware of the small storm that was about to arrive, one measured envelope at a time. I could hear Lena's voice, high and sharp. "We should really take over some of the arrangements tomorrow. Mom will understand." I pressed my lips together, savoring the irony. They thought understanding meant consent. They were wrong. I arranged the envelopes, carefully, ensuring each would reach the intended hand during the reception. Tom Riley had double-checked the legal details, and I smiled at the meticulous perfection of it all. No confrontation, no spectacle, just quiet, deliberate action. Nancy shook her head with a faint laugh. "I can't believe how precise this is." I smiled softly. "It doesn't have to be loud, Nancy. The best lessons are often the quietest." By morning, they'll understand exactly what patience, clarity, and respect mean. Hours passed as I moved through the motions. The house smelled faintly of lavender and fresh paper, the soft tick of the clock marking time in deliberate rhythm. Each envelope felt heavier than it should, each one a testament to years of careful observation and the quiet wisdom of experience. Later, I walked through the rooms checking arrangements, noticing small details, the angle of the chairs, the placement of vases, even the way the light caught the hardwood floors. Everything had its place, and everything was under my careful attention. By the time I finally rested in the study chair, a sense of calm and quiet triumph filled me. Tomorrow, laughter and celebration would reign, but beneath the smiles and joy, the truth would gently, irrevocably assert itself. Jake and Lena had no idea. And that, I thought softly, sipping the last of my tea, was the most satisfying part of all. The house was unusually still that night. Emily had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from excitement and anticipation. I wandered through the rooms, quietly checking the final touches, the ribbons perfectly aligned, the flowers arranged just so, the envelopes discreetly placed in the little silver tray I had set on the dining table. Every detail mattered. Every subtle act was part of a quiet orchestration that only I could see. Jake and Lena were arguing softly in the guest room, voices low so as not to disturb Emily. "Tomorrow, we really should take control," Lena whispered sharply. "I just know she won't argue. Mom's always been so compliant." I smiled faintly, walking past their door. Compliant. That was the word they chose for decades of polite observation and patience. They had no idea how precise the reckoning could be. Nancy appeared quietly at my side, a small tray of tea in her hands. "You're certain about this?" she asked gently. Her eyes searched mine, but there was no doubt. "Absolutely," I said. "By tomorrow, everything will be clear." They've assumed too much, and it's time they understand the weight of assumptions. I thought about Emily's face today, the way she had fluttered between excitement and nerves, oblivious to the quiet tension threading through the house. Protecting that joy had always been my priority. I wasn't doing this for vengeance. I was doing this for dignity, clarity, and love for her future and for mine. I moved to the study once more, looking at the envelopes one last time. Each one contained more than paper. Each one was a gentle assertion of truth, a subtle correction to a world that had assumed I would step aside quietly. My hands lingered on the stack, and I could almost feel the anticipation of tomorrow. The quiet impact that would ripple through every smile, every handshake, every glance. From the living room I could hear Jake pacing softly, muttering under his breath about keeping things under control, and how easy it would be if Mom just stepped aside. I pressed my lips together, savoring the quiet power of patience. He didn't realize how little control he actually had. I poured myself one last cup of tea, the warm liquid calming the slight flutter in my chest. Nancy sat across from me, silently supportive, a witness to the careful preparations that would soon unfold. "It's almost poetic," she whispered. I smiled, letting the words settle. Poetic, indeed. No raised voices, no dramatic confrontations. Just quiet, deliberate clarity. By the time I finally climbed the stairs to my room, the house seemed to exhale around me. Tomorrow, Emily would shine, surrounded by family and friends. But underneath the laughter and celebration, the quiet, careful truth I had set into motion would be revealed. And in that revelation, dignity, respect, and subtle justice would quietly prevail. As I drifted toward sleep, I felt a deep, steady peace. The stage was set, the envelopes were ready. And by morning, everything would shift softly, elegantly, irrevocably. The wedding day dawned soft and bright, sunlight spilling through the windows of our home. Emily was radiant, her laughter floating through the hall, like a melody I could feel in my chest. Everything seemed perfect, as it should. But beneath the surface, the quiet tension I had orchestrated was ready to unfold. Guests began arriving, smiles and hugs filling the rooms. Jake and Lena moved through the crowd with that same overconfidence, glancing occasionally at me as if I were a mere decoration in the day's event. They didn't notice the envelopes neatly placed in the silver tray, waiting for the right moment. I watched them, calm, serene, each breath deliberate. As dinner ended and Emily and Jake prepared to cut the cake, I quietly handed the first envelope to my daughter. "Here," I said softly. "Give these to the guests as a keepsake, something to remember today by." Emily, busy and radiant, smiled and nodded, thinking it was a sweet gesture. She had no idea what each envelope contained. One by one, the envelopes were passed around, and I watched quietly as the subtle ripples began. Inside, each guest found carefully written notes, legal statements clarifying ownership of the house, reminders of my independence and the quiet truth that nothing could be assumed or taken without consent. Each envelope was gentle in tone, but firm, a silent correction to a world that had assumed entitlement. Jake's smile faltered first. He opened his envelope, expecting a meaningless keepsake, and found the truth laid bare. His fingers trembled slightly as he read, confusion and disbelief crossing his face. Lena leaned over, whispering to him, but her own envelope revealed the same message. The smug confidence they had carried for years dissolved in a slow, silent realization. I felt no triumph in their discomfort, only calm clarity. This wasn't revenge for anger's sake. It was the satisfaction of patience, observation, and quiet action. Years of careful living, protecting my dignity and my daughter's future, had brought me to this exact moment. And in the quiet revelation, respect was restored, not through confrontation, but through clarity. Emily, unaware of the impact, laughed softly and hugged me. "Mom, thank you for helping everything go perfectly," she said, and in that moment I realized the true gift had not been the envelopes or the lesson, they were the joy and security I had quietly safeguarded for my daughter. As the day unfolded with laughter, dancing, and celebration, I watched quietly from the side, a gentle smile on my lips. Jake and Lena had learned their lesson, not loudly, not angrily, but with the slow, quiet weight of truth. And for the first time in years, I felt fully at peace. Thank you for listening to my story. Sometimes the quietest actions carry the most power. Passions, clarity, and dignity often speak louder than words or anger ever could. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own story. In the comments, maybe your voice will be next on her voice.